Hi guys, and welcome to this video. I know I've been away for a little while. That is because I have been dealing with the things of life, shall we call it, as everyone does. And I actually just filmed a video, but it's quite a deep video. I wanted to come back to you guys with something that was a little bit more light-hearted. I don't know if I can call it light-hearted, to be honest, because we're going to be talking about a kind of cult. But still, I wanted to come back to you with something a little bit different for this video. And we are going to be talking about Hillsong Church. Now, some of you may have heard of Hillsong before, others may not have heard of Hillsong. They are a church which was founded in Australia, I think about 30 years or so ago. They have locations in the UK, Australia, the US, South Africa, and lots of other countries, but I would say they're more predominant, I want to say, in English speaking countries, so Australia, US, South Africa, UK. I myself have actually been in a Hillsong church, which is why I wanted to do this video, to give you guys my direct perspective, because I have actually been in one of their churches before. I attended a Hillsong church in around 2010 it was. At the time I was married to my husband. I've now been separated from him for about 15 years or so. And I attended the church because of my husband. At the time I was a practicing Buddhist. Those who've been on my channel a long time now know that I was a Buddhist for nearly 20 years. And in 2023 I started to follow Judaism. I am ethnically and culturally Jewish. And I started to follow Judaism in 2023 after the passing of my grandmother. So, at the time, as I just said, when I attended the Hillsong Church, I was a practicing Buddhist. My husband was a born-again Christian. His family are predominantly born-again Christians in another country. And his parents are actually elders in the church in that country. And I personally, I'll be honest, it's not against anyone who watches my channel or anything, I've just never been a big fan of Christianity, specifically for a number of different reasons. But for the sake of my husband, in 2010 I agreed to attend a church service because he wanted to essentially attend a church service, so I agreed to it. At the same time, I think when you attend a religious venue, you're open to certain things, and there are other things which you think, oh, I wasn't prepared for that. And prior to attending Hillsong, I had my wits about me, shall I say, because I'm not the biggest fan of Christianity in itself. But at the same time, I was like, okay, let me just go along with this for my husband. I have no intention to convert to Christianity or anything. I will go there for the hour and a half of the service, and then I'm out of there. My husband's happy. He's gone for his hour and a half service on a Sunday, whatever. And at the time of attending Hillsong, it is quite, like, I remember attending it thinking this is quite cultish because of the way Hillsong is. They have a certain structure in place where they always have a live band on stage. They play kind of what I call soft Christian rock pop. And I think it's like that at every venue, because it was like that at the venue I went to. I remember it being in, I don't know, it's like a hippodrome kind of theatre arena in London. As far as I can remember, it was on Tottenham Court Road in London, and it was a big venue where you do have like theatre production, so it's massive. You can have thousands of people sitting there, and that tends to be one of their specialities, where they have thousands of people attend a Sunday service and they play this kind of pop, Christian pop rock music. And at the time of me attending, I sat through the service, you know, I'm just sort of sitting there waiting for the time to pass. And even though back then I was more kind of social and an extrovert, now I'm more of an introvert, I didn't go in there with the intention to socialise with people, because my intention is to sit there for an hour and a half and leave the service. It's not to convert to Christianity or anything like that. I'm not interested. So I sort of sat in the service, sitting through the music, whatever they're saying live on the stage, whatever. And I didn't realise at the time, for some reason, that my husband had actually gone off and started chatting to these pastors. And at Hillsong, because at their venues they have hundreds or thousands of people attend, like on a Sunday service, they don't have one pastor, they have 4 or 5 pastors, sometimes more, at their venues. So you'll obviously have like a pastor, someone leading the service on stage, but there are other pastors there walking around chatting with people. And I actually didn't realise this at the time of attending this service. So I'm sitting in the service listening to this pop rock whatever on stage. It's like a stage, so you can just sit there and watch it. And my husband's gone off and he's chatting with these other pastors, which I didn't know that he was actually doing this at the time. Now, there were issues in our marriage, hence we ended up separating probably a few months after that, or a month after that. But I didn't know he was doing this. So he'd actually started discussing our marital problems with 1 or 2 pastors there. And I don't know he's doing this, and I'm just watching this pop rock on the stage, whatever. Now comes the end of the service and everything. The live band and all that is finished. So it's time to go. So my husband comes to get me, but he doesn't come to get me on his own. He turns up with one of these pastor people, and I'm sort of standing there like, you know, where you feel like ambushed basically. And I already understood, like in that moment, my brain went like ding ding ding, like tilt, like okay, this is what is happening. And I realized very quickly what he'd been doing. So obviously he'd gone off to chat with the pastor while I'm watching all this pop rock band thing on stage, and he's been telling them about all our marital problems. He's now rocked up at the end of the service with the pastor, and the pastor, instead of saying hello, nice to meet you, they literally just start saying, yes, if you need help with your marital problems, counselling, Firstly, guys, I'm thinking, right, whenever I've met a religious person, like a rabbi or an imam or anyone, they introduce themselves like, hello, my name is so-and-so, nice to meet you, Then they let you introduce yourself, and then you start a conversation. This was just, my husband's turned up, come to get me at the end of the service with this pastor. The pastor's like, yes, so if you want to start counselling, I'm thinking like, firstly, you haven't even introduced yourself to me. Yes, I've realised you're a pastor, blah, 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 but like, common courtesy is such that don't think you're so big that you shouldn't even introduce yourself. I don't even know your bloody name, right? And they're just like, yeah, so if you want to start marital counselling because you've got problems, I'm thinking like this. Firstly, this is so embarrassing because my husband didn't tell me that he's gone to do this. Then I have to stand there like an idiot and be like extra polite and whatever, because the way that I am as a person, guys, is even if I disagree with something and whatever, it's like my discrepancy and gripe is with my husband's. It's not actually with the pastor, because the pastor probably presumes as well that my husband's already discussed with me that he's going to go and talk to them or something. So the pastor probably doesn't even realise that I didn't know that my husband's actually going to do this, that I was probably in agreement with this. And secondly, the pastor didn't even know that I was a different religion. This is something I realised quite quickly, that they didn't know I was a Buddhist, that I'm not a Christian, right? So I had to be kind of like, no, for the moment, you know, we're not ready for that now or something. I must have like made some excuse like that, and then I told my husband like, let's go, and then we left. But I thought like, I was so annoyed because I was like, why has he done this to me? He didn't tell me he was going to do this, whatever. But then I also realised, like, how can someone that you haven't even introduced yourself to me, I don't know your name as the pastor, and you're already telling me about counselling services when I don't even know what your name is. I don't even know what your background is. Like, I don't know how it always is in other religions, but I know in Judaism, rabbis need to have certain qualifications, and if you're even going to do counselling and things like that, you also need to have certain degrees and things within Judaism and to do counselling. Like, I know rabbis that are training as psychotherapists and things like that, and they have to do a standard degree and masters at university in psychotherapy. They can't just counsel people because religiously you're the same religion as me. It doesn't work like that. So then I was like thinking, like, what qualifications has this person even got? And all of this. Anyway, we left there and I never went back, and then my husband continued to attend these services on and off, right? Now, I didn't think anything of this for years. This was back in 2010. I didn't think anything of this for years and years and years. I just felt like this place is not a good place, and it's not the place for me. And it does come across as they've got this certain setup with the rock band, with about 5 pastors walking around chatting to people, talking about counselling services and whatever. Like, firstly, in any church, I'll be honest, guys, I've been in other churches before as well when I was younger, and I've never seen a pastor walk around in a service and chat to people about marital counselling services during the actual Sunday service, because that, for me, that's like a disrespect to the pastor who's leading the service, that you're supposed to be listening to what that pastor is saying on stage, right? So the whole thing was bizarre, and I was always like, this comes across as very cultish, but I'm never going back there, that's it. Anyway, when COVID started, there started to be a lot of stories that started to come out about Hillsong Church, as some of you may have come across. And when I mention Hillsong Church to people now, people don't sometimes know what it is. As soon as I mention Justin Bieber being baptised by Pastor Carl Lentz, and then they're like, who's Carl Lentz? And then I show a photo, and they're like, oh yeah, the pastor that walks around with no top on in his underpants. And people start to put 2 and 2 together, and they're like, oh my God, that's Hillsong. When I attended Hillsong, this was before Pastor Carl Lentz was massive, because this was in 2010, it was 15 years ago. Carl Lentz became big in the last 6-7 years or so, and then he's become like that mega celebrity pastor who baptised Justin Bieber, I think in 2019 or 2020, and in a bathtub, in a basketball player's bathtub, and he walks around with no top on, in his underpants, and he dresses super trendy and whatever. He's not someone that you would immediately think, yeah, this is the pastor of a Christian Pentecostal church, because for those that don't know, Hillsong are Pentecostal. They're not open to people being gay or transgender or whatever. They have very specific views on that, but the way that they try to come across is we're open to everyone and everything, and no, that's not how Hillsong actually is, right? So years later, all these things have come out about Pastor Carl Lentz, the one who has his top off. That's how Pastor Carl Lentz is known. And you would think that already a pastor walking around with no top on, with his pants so low that you can almost see his crotch, is alarm bells as a representative for a religious institution, whether they're a cult or not. Because if you are trying to recruit people into your religious institution, most of the representatives don't tend to walk around with no clothes on. That's not what the standard procedure is to recruit people into a religious institution, at the beginning at least. But people found Carl Lentz very charismatic, and women found Carl Lentz very attractive, and let's go to that one because Pastor Carl Lentz is there and he's very attractive, and that's even though he had kids and a wife. And then years later, in 2021, 2022, it's come out that Pastor Carl Lentz is having affairs, and that it's come out that the other pastors in these mega churches are encouraging people to have marital counselling and encouraging them to break up their marriages if one is religious and the other one is not as religious, and that they should actually get a divorce. I don't know of any religion that's a mainstream religion that encourages couples to get a divorce when they start marital counselling. The aim of marital counselling is to counsel the couple to work on issues within the marriage to improve the marriage and get it back on track. The aim is not to encourage people to get a divorce from the get-go of session 1. But Hillsong had pastors that were counselling pastors, clearly didn't have any qualifications in counselling, encouraging people from session 1 to get divorced if they felt like one is more religious than the other, which is absolutely ridiculous. And when I discovered this is around 2022 that I started hearing this, and I remember meeting this pastor who was a supposed counsellor as well. I thought, thank God, even though I separated from my husband, I thought, thank God I did not let this person, counsellor, pastor, get involved with me and my husband, because already the situation was so bad in our marriage that had that counsellor person come in, I don't even know what these people could have done. Quite frankly, it could have been about 10 million times worse. And this is all these stories started to come out about Hillsong, about pastors cheating, about pastors doing things to young women that they shouldn't be doing, pastors having affairs that are actually married with kids and things like this. And I started to think, like, I attended Hillsong on the basis that my husband wanted to attend, on the basis that he thought that this was some amazing mega church and everything, and this place encourages people to get divorced and does things to young girls. And currently, to this day, Hillsong are in a litigation legally, and have been in a litigation legally, I think, for about 4 or 5 years now, with their founder. I've forgotten his name now. And they portray themselves one way, and they do not accept homosexuals and transgender people. And the other thing that they're not the biggest fan of is people who are of a different colour, I want to say. So specifically black people. In their churches, you don't tend to see, I mean, I don't know how it is. In the US, it's a bit different. You see more black people. In the UK, you see less black people. In a Hillsong church, you tend to see more white people. Or you'll see a few people like me who are mixed, and like my husband. But you won't tend to see black people. You definitely will not see black people as pastors or in mainstream leadership roles in Hillsong, because that's not something that they promote. There is no racial fairness, there is no sexual orientation fairness in their church. And so I always feel like there are certain religions, guys, which pop up like this, like they branch off from a mainstream religion. So obviously you've got Christianity, you've got Catholicism, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, whatever. But when you start to get these branches of churches or mosques that branch off from the mainstream, this is the issue that you get people behaving oddly, doing things that they shouldn't be doing, yet those people are so popular, and those are the ones that are preaching online, and then their services are filmed and posted online for people to watch, and yet behind closed doors the things that they are doing are absolutely disgusting and shocking. There are people that say that Carl Lentz, he was the pastor and leader for the New York Hillsong. So it was a massive Hillsong that he led. Like his services, like 7,000 people would attend on a Sunday or more. And it's like there are people in those kind of roles, and they are not fit to be in those roles. I said to one of my friends the other day, I said, like, I cannot imagine a rabbi, and there are rabbis that have done things wrong in leadership roles, but I can't imagine a rabbi doing a Shabbat service on a Saturday and you know, in the meantime they're in the press and the public walking around with no top on, in their underpants and nearly showing their crotch. That cannot happen in Judaism. They will be struck off by the Bet Din, which is the Jewish law court, immediately for something like that. There's no way that it would even be up for discussion. They would just get struck off. So I struggle to understand how this person, Collins, has been put in charge of leading a congregation in a Pentecostal church, and for some reason Hillsong don't like to say the Pentecostal, and for me, I believe that the reasoning behind that is because they want to show that they are more open and modernized with today's society and everything. And one thing that their founder says is that they are very modernized, but they're still traditional in their approaches. Like, for example, I'm Jewish. I'm what's called a Masorti Jew or conservative Jew, which means I'm traditional in the way I follow Judaism, but I'm modernized in my day-to-day things I do and everything else at the same time. However, for Hillsong, they have their pop rock bands, which is what distinguishes them specifically, right? They're Christian rock. But when it comes to being gay, transgender, as I said, things like that, even the racial side of things, no, they're not interested. There's actually a saying in the Bible. And when I was little, guys, I went to actually a Christian school because it was the only one near us. So I went to a Christian school for 3 years. And one thing that used to always come up, you know, like when they used to do assembly in the UK, they always repeat the same things, like, it's so draining, we always do the same hymns and whatever. But one saying that always used to come up is, like that the devil has many faces. And another one that used to come up is the easy way is never the right way. And I've always remembered those two sayings because they're in the Bible. And the devil has many faces, for me, indicates that it's like, you know, could be a nice person, appears a nice person in sheep's clothing, but you're a wolf behind it all. So it's not because you are leading a congregation that you're actually a good person. You could be disguised as a pastoral leader, but you're actually a devil, because the devil has many faces at the end of the day. And I always remember that. So when I look at leaders of religions, etc., how people will venerate them and respect them and whatever, I never have ever, I think in my life, ever viewed religious leaders like that, whether they're like rabbis, pastors, imams, whatever. I don't view people like that. I see them as people that are highly religious and normally very, very knowledgeable about the religion, and that's it. And I will give them that respect for the fact that they have that much knowledge about the religion. However, it's always in the back of my mind that that person could be what I refer to as a representative of the devil. They present themselves to you one way, but actually they do other things behind closed doors. And I always keep that in mind, that it's not because they present themselves to you one way that they are perfect themselves, because they are still human at the end of the day. And I always try to remember this. And when I see Carl Lentz, I remember seeing him years ago when he first did that baptism with Justin Bieber about 6 years ago. And I remember Hillsong popping up and thinking, this is really weird. This is not normal. I know myself, I've been in Hillsong in 2010. This pastor is not normal, what he's doing and the way he's walking around and portraying himself. Plus he's a father with a wife and kids. This is not normal behaviour. And I always knew there was something behind it. And years later it's come out that there's all these scandals about Hillsong, and that the founder of Hillsong now is in all these legal litigations, but his actual father, who was the primary founder before that, when the Hillsong was called something else, he was convicted of multiple offences against young children actually as well. I always think to myself, there is a reason why I didn't attend any of the services, and now everyone knows the reason, like because Hillsong was founded by someone who committed offences against children, and his son, who is the current owner of Hillsong now in his like late 60s or whatever, he concealed his father's criminal acts against children, shall we say. And this was Carl Lentz's boss. I mean, Carl Lentz is far from perfect. But when you see the founder of Hillsong who's concealed his own father's crimes for acts against children, then you know that this is not a good church. There are always going to be those people, guys, who will be believers of Hillsong and they're amazing and they're a mega church in this. And when you found a religion on criminal acts against children, there's nothing good that can come from that religion or that cult, should I say. And people who continue to follow Hillsong, regardless of the crimes that have come out of this and that have been proven, because there's loads of evidence online. Evidence is there. And that continue to follow this mega church, I find it shocking. Even now on buses, lately, I've seen so many buses where there's other churches advertised, like Jubilee Church and other churches in London like that are promoted a certain way, and you attend them and they push you to donate money and tell you, okay, you must donate money because it's part of your tithe, it's part of what you have to do as a good Christian. No, there are many things that you can do as a good Christian. You can dedicate your time, you can volunteer to help with certain services, help people in the community. Same in any religion, guys. There are many things that you can do, even if you can't afford to donate money, that you can do other things to help, right? You don't have to feel bad because you can't donate money. We live in a time where everything is bloody expensive, to be honest, and I'm sure God appreciates the fact that we don't all have thousands of pounds every month that we can just donate here, there and everywhere, because it's just not possible. So never ever feel bad as well if you're someone who's quite religious that you can't just give loads of money. I can't. There was a point where I used to donate to charity and now I can't honestly afford it. I can't. It is what it is. But always be alert and aware, guys, that wherever you're attending religiously, whatever venue that is, always keep your eyes open, because there are wolves in sheep's clothing hiding in plain sight everywhere.